Hey everybody, what's going on? Hellmite here, bringing you another video from Grab the Lantern today. It's Tuesday and the patch notes for patch 11.7 have been posted, so it's time to break down the top 5 changes for this week's patch. As always, I'll be going through the biggest changes on the patch and letting you guys know what the most impactful things will be in your games going forward. 11.7 changes a bunch of things, but doesn't change a ton of things very significantly, so I bundled a couple of smaller changes together so I can talk about them all at once, starting from the bottom, of course, with a couple changes to some mythic items, Trinity Force, and Turbo Chem Tank. Now, I talked about these in a previous video where I did go on in depth as to what is likely to change on the PvE going forward, and these changes did go live, so I won't spend a ton of time on them, but suffice it to say, Trinity Force has been reverted from sort of a very attack speed focused bruiser item, which meant that no bruisers ever bought it because it gave too much attack speed, into something that they could actually build and not feel too bad about. The attack speed mythic passive has been swapped out for 3 AD movement speed and ability haste per legendary item you complete, and the attack damage has been increased while the attack speed base on the item has been decreased. So overall, this will be an item that a lot of bruisers will be able to build now and feel a little bit better even if they don't really care about a ton of attack speed. Chem Tank, conversely, is taking, I would say, a fairly justified nerf here, as it especially does a super good job at removing the weakness of a couple of champions like Skarner and Udyr, who were sort of running over the metagame now that they have the ability to buy Chem Tank and sort of bypass a lot of their intended problems. So the supercharged bonus movement speed is down to 60%. It's still quite fast, but as a compensation buff, the supercharged slow has been increased to 50%. What this means is that it's slightly worse if you're just trying to use it to get close to an enemy champion, but not necessarily get value from the slow explosion at the end. But if you are able to get all the way into base contact with an enemy champion and get that supercharged slow off, it'll be a little bit more rewarding for you. So the kinds of champions that were already building it will still want to build it. I'm not going to say it's bad now, but it's definitely a lot weaker than it was before, so there are maybe some other options available for those champions. Moving on to the next couple of changes here, talking about Essence Reaver and Lord Dominic's Regards. Now, these two items have been obscenely gold efficient for quite some time, so they're both being tapped down a peg on this patch in order to make it so that they are not a mandatory rush item or second item, as the case might be. Essence Reaver was incredibly gold efficient. I believe it was 112% gold efficient even before factoring in the passive. Before this patch. Now after this patch it will be slightly less gold efficient, despite the fact that it did take a gold drop. So generally speaking, even though this looks like they didn't change anything significantly about Essence Reaver, it is still weaker than it was before, so you can rest easy a little bit on that. Meanwhile, Lord Dominic's Regards, people were building this item even when the enemy team had nobody who was stacking armor, because that's just how gold efficient it was. You didn't care about the Giant Slayer passive, or really even the armor penetration. So the fact that it's gone up in cost and its attack damage have gone down means that it's being more solidly refined as a niche item intended to be built when you're dealing with a lot of big fat fatties who are stacking armor and health. Both of these items are still quite good, don't get me wrong, they will still be purchased, but hopefully these changes get them out of a sort of must-buy situation where essentially the answer is always buy Essence Reaver, buy Lord Dominic's Regards, because they're just that good. Moving on to champions now, talking about Yorick. Now these changes are massive, especially given that I feel like Yorick is not too far out of the ability to be played in the elite level or pro level. I think he actually brings a lot of really interesting tools to the table, but these changes to his E actually give him so many quality of life improvements that I believe it just ends up as sort of a net huge buff for Yorick. The biggest thing here is on Morning Mist is that marked enemy champions and large monsters continuously awaken nearby graves up to the maximum of 4. What this means is that if Yorick places level 1 like he normally does, just last hitting minions with Q and stacking up graves, he can hit an enemy champion with E and then immediately start walking at them, because that champion will awaken those nearby graves, and then the Mistwalkers will leap to them and start damaging them. Yorick can then use his last rites as the auto attack reset that he always wanted it to be. Just a lot of really nice things that he can do with this change in particular. The other thing that this does for him is that Mistwalkers now deal 200% damage when they leap to marked enemy champions and large monsters, which actually lets Yorick burst quite well. The biggest problem with Yorick beforehand is the minions would leap to the enemies, they'd get off one auto attack, and then basically get kited because they're fairly slow and enemy champions can just kind of run away from them, and then they don't really get any extra value. This means that Mistwalkers are guaranteed a ton of value as they land on enemy champions, and it also means that Yorick can kind of sort of burst in a way once he's able to land that E. So it doesn't change the fact that Yorick is still super dependent on hitting his E, but it does mean that the Yoricks who are able to hit their E are going to get so much value. So huge changes here for Yorick. Really excited to see where he's at following this patch. Scrolling up here a bit, we are going to be talking about Hecarim, as I feel like I talked about this a little bit on the last time I did a patch note rundown here, but Hecarim did not take a very significant nerf on the last patch, and surprisingly, he's back in the patch notes because turns out he's still quite good. So Hecarim is getting a change here. The devastating charge bonus movement speed is down to 65% based on time active, so remember that because of his passive, movement speed is damage, so this is a damage drop for Hecarim as well. He's doing less damage on the charge, and he's also not able to roam around the map quite as quickly as he used to be, so generally speaking, this is going to be a fairly significant nerf to Hecarim across the board. Again, we'll have to see if it's actually enough to get him out of pro play as a staple, but I do like this change a lot better than the Rampage change Riot gave, where I didn't really feel like that was significant in any way, shape, or form to Hecarim. Finally, one last thought here on Kaiser, as I really feel like this is a decent change for Kaiser. I would like to see some other changes directed at Kaiser as well, but either way, this is where we're at, and I do think it is a good nerf to Kaiser, which is the cooldown on Killer Instinct going up by 20 seconds at its early ranks. What this means is that right now, Kaiser really doesn't have to decide when and where she uses Killer Instinct. She just kind of has it as a yes please button, so she can use it to escape a gang, she can recall, she can buy some items, come back to lane, last hit for a little bit, and then have Killer Instinct available again to dash onto a low health enemy champion and finish bursting them down. The additional cooldown will make it so that she has to really decide if she wants to try and use it to be aggressive or if she needs to use it to be defensive. So I do quite like this change. I think it makes Kaiser actually think about Killer Instinct and when and where she uses it, as it is a very powerful ability. So I quite like where this nerf is at, and I think it's a justified one given Kaiser's relative safety. And that is going to be it for me today, guys. Those are the top 5 changes of patch 11.7. Let me know if you guys think I missed anything down in the comment section below, or which changes you're most excited for. I know I'm really going to have a good time with those Yorick changes, but again, let me know what you guys are excited to see coming in the next coming weeks. If you enjoyed the video today, go ahead and leave a like, and if you really enjoyed the video, consider subscribing. I upload a video every Monday, Friday, and on patch days like today as well. Once again, thank you guys so very much for watching. I do appreciate it, and I'll talk to you all later.